Good afternoon. My name is Rosa, and I'd like to welcome you to the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development webinar. Today's webinar is titled Rural Social Media Champions, Development of Models of Diffusion and Best Business Practices. The presenters of this webinar are Linda Niehm, Barbara Frazier, and Leslie Stoel. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay. Thank you, Rosa. Good afternoon. My name is Linda Niehm, and I'm the lead investigator on the project Rural Social Media Champions Development of Models of Diffusion and Best Business Practices. This is our NCRCRD funded project. We'd like to thank the NCRCRD for their support of this research. I would also like to remind you that there is a poll. I think some of you have completed that already, that asked about your role regarding today's webinar. And if you would please complete that, you'll also have a chance at the end of the webinar. I'd like to also thank my co-PIs on this project. And they will be co-presenting with me today as well. Again, I'm Linda Niehm from Iowa State University. My co-PIs are Barbara Frazier from Western Michigan University and Leslie Stoel from The Ohio State University. Here's a brief outline of our presentation today. We'll be sharing with you the scope and goals of our project, some key background information. We'll be defining just who social media champions are and what we found in rural communities when we set out to interview and profile these individuals. We'll also talk about the two theoretical models that framed our study, and give some best practices that we learned from these social media champions during the scope of our project. And then we'll end up with some information on our next steps, future research. Okay, regarding the project scope and goals, we wanted to first of all identify rural business owners who were social media champions in their communities. We have certainly noted there are some people out there doing really great things, and then we have many who have been slow to get on board. We wanted to see the best of the best. So we set out to identify those who were social media champions. We'll elaborate more on the definition of those individuals in just a few minutes and profile their best practices. We also wanted to develop a model of social media diffusion and adoption and identify factors that facilitated social media adoption. And then finally, we wanted to use a case study approach to identify best practices in social media by rural retailers. Okay, so that's the overview of our project. I'm going to turn it over next to Leslie.
All right, thanks, Linda. First of all, what do we mean by when we refer to social media? Well, we used a definition that we found in the research literature, and that is that social media refers to a group of internet-based applications that allow the creation and exchange of user-generated content. So probably everybody's familiar with things like Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, and then there's certainly a growing number of different social media tools out there all the time. Key characteristics of social media are, first of all, that it has high social presence. So communication can be as close as one-to-one, and communication is immediate. Also, social media has a high level of media richness, so communications can be very easy to understand and interpret. And there, even think about videos and pictures as the ultimate in richness. There's the opportunity for self-presentation and self-disclosure with social media also. So there is that opportunity for personalization. Now, why did we want to examine social media use of small businesses in rural communities? Well, we know from prior research that small rural businesses face unique challenges because of their small size and because of their rural location. So we know that relative to non-rural businesses, small rural businesses have been a bit slower to adopt social media strategies. They have limited exposure to new technologies. Often they have less access to support networks to help them adopt these new technologies, and sometimes they suffer due to lack of time, money, and technology skills. And when we look at the broad spectrum of rural social media users, so not just businesses, but all people in rural communities, we find that they are younger and they have about half the number of friends relative to their urban and metro social media users. They also post fewer comments, but yet they log in more frequently, and they have fewer reciprocal relationships. And their networks tend to be much smaller geographically, and they're more likely to use social media to deepen relationships with people that they already know rather than to create new relationships. So combined together, these facts suggest that it's a challenge for small businesses in rural communities to learn about and use social media, and then once they do get on board, to spread the word via social media to users who are most likely to patronize their businesses, but who might be reluctant or slow in using social media. So this is a real challenge and an interesting one to take a look at. So we began our investigation by looking at two key models that explain the uptake of innovations, and the concepts in these models provided the foundation for the interview questions that we asked our participants. The first was Rogers' diffusion of innovation model, which examines the diffusion of innovations on a societal level, and the technology acceptance model, which examines acceptance decisions at the individual level. So the Rogers model really defines a process of diffusion. So developing knowledge about the innovation and then becoming persuaded that it should be used, then making the decision to actually use the innovation, and then the actual implementation of that decision, and then confirming that the innovation decision is a good one or not. Some key factors that have been proposed to affect the innovation process include the communication channels that are used to convey information about the innovation, and adopter characteristics that make adoption more or less likely by the person or the people, and the nature of the innovation itself that makes trial or adoption more or less likely. The technology acceptance model looks primarily at the perceived attributes of the innovation, so the ease of use and the usefulness of it. And then later research on this technology acceptance model shows that a number of factors very similar to those in the Rogers model also influence technology acceptance. So the communication channels, again, used to convey information, the nature of the social system, whether it encourages or discourages acceptance of new technologies, and change agents' promotional efforts to encourage acceptance, and even the nature of the decision itself. So now we get to this interesting question of who are the rural social media champions? Well, they are business owners who are actively and successfully using innovative social media techniques. And these champions are really important to us because they serve as exemplars for others in their communities and are actually facilitating the diffusion of social media technologies in their local area. So in essence, they're the local change agents. So for this study, rural social media champions are defined as among the first in their communities to use social media. They're using at least one form of social media. They've been using it for at least 1 year, and they're considered a leader among the community, or in the community and where they conduct business. And now I'm going to turn it over to Barb to talk about our methodology.
Thanks, Leslie. I'd like to talk a little bit about how we identified and recruited the participants for the study first of all, and then tell you a little bit about them. Our goal was to interview individuals who met specific study criteria So we used a chain referral method to recruit the participants. We focused our inquiry on retail and service businesses in Michigan, Iowa, and Ohio. We started by contacting 125 rural business groups such as chambers of commerce, downtown business associations, and so forth, and we shared a description of our study and our description of the social media champions and requested referrals of individuals in their business community who fit the description. This resulted in identification of 99 potential participants. 55 of these participants both fit the study criteria and expressed an interest in participating. We were able to arrange interviews with 32 business owners in 30 different communities, and we completed 11 interviews in Michigan, 11 in Ohio, and 10 in Iowa. We conducted face-to-face interviews last summer, April through August. Then we audio taped these interviews and transcribed them and used en vivo to analyze using the diffusion and adoption concepts that Leslie just talked about. And our goal was to build a model to explain both the diffusion of social media in rural communities and also to identify factors that lead to adoption. We also followed up each interview with a web-based survey to capture the descriptives on the participants and their businesses. A little bit about the profile of our participants. Our sample included a wide array of businesses, including a farm, a radio station, a movie theater, gift and clothing retailers, personal and professional services, a bed and breakfast, a motel, restaurants, and a hair salon. Businesses were situated in communities that ranged from a few hundred in population to just about 40,000. Facebook, we found, was used by all of our respondents. Over half had used Facebook for more than 2 years in their businesses, and all of the participants that we talked to had used one or more social media tools for personal use as well. 25 of the 28 responding to the web survey used at least, reported using at least 2 social media tools, and 21 of those 28 reported using at least 3 tools, although we did find this hard to confirm with a search of some of the platforms afterward, not being able to find evidence of use. Our participant profile, our sample was mostly female, over age 30. About half had were college graduates. These were generally well-established businesses, with almost half more than 10 years old. Most had annual sales of $500,000 or less, so smaller businesses, and about a third had no other employees besides the business owner, with the majority employing fewer than 10. A little bit about the profile of these participants and their social media use. They reported almost without exception their primary use of social media is to interact with their customers. It's a very critical element of managing their customer relationships. Some secondary uses including linking with their suppliers, which usually involves something like posting a link to the supplier website or Facebook page on their own Facebook page. A few followed supplier Twitter feeds. A number also used Facebook to network with fellow community businesses and share community information. Cross-posting was a common strategy. For example, posting something positive about a non-competing business across the street in the same community and hoping for some reciprocity. We found that Twitter was primarily used, if it was used at all, it was primarily used to find new suppliers and follow general trends. Most reported that they didn't perceive that Twitter was used by their customers, so there really wasn't that incentive to use Twitter to communicate with them. None of our participants relied solely on social media. They all used it as a blend with traditional marketing tools to complement their social media efforts. So now I'd like to tell you a little bit about what we found so far about the diffusion and innovation process among our social media champions. We found, first of all, that in our sample, awareness and knowledge of social media developed primarily from history of personal use or use of by family and friends. There was minimal formal training involved. Rather, these social media champions relied on trial and error, experimentation, and online tools to learn how these tools work to teach themselves. In terms of communicating knowledge, we found that the social media champions are deeply embedded in their local networks. They're very socially active, and it's through these networks that they actively seek and share social media ideas locally with fellow business owners in their community. They also reported having numerous professional and personal contacts outside of the community, and this is where they're able to discover new ideas and new social media strategies that they can bring into their own businesses. These are early adopters, and they reported reasons for the adoption of social media with respect to relative advantage of the tool, as number one being the greater reach that social media has when compared to traditional marketing. It's more cost effective, often free, at least in terms of money resources, and far more flexible than traditional means of marketing. They also like the immediate feedback feature of social media as opposed to a website or other traditional means, and the ability to be able to fit social media tasks into their daily routine is also an advantage. Some of the disadvantages that were mentioned were primarily was the lack of readiness of their target market for some tools, such as we talked about before with Twitter, and they also mentioned that social media requires an extra level of vigilance and time to monitor and manage communication and meet the expectations of their target market, of their customers. The persuasion stage in innovation decisions, this process is also where an individual forms an attitude about the innovation relating to its compatibility and its complexity, or how well the innovation fits into the present and future situation. We learned from our champions that social media tools help these people, these business owners, stay and feel connected to everyday life. It fits very well into their daily personal and business routine, and we did find that compatibility and benefit does vary with the social media use of the clientele. Our sample found Facebook easy to use and navigate at the basic levels, but some needed assistance with more complex application of these tools, and finding time to figure out these applications was an ongoing issue for many of our respondents. Being able to try out an innovation on a probationary basis is also a determining factor in the persuasion stage of diffusion. Facebook is easy to try out, but respondents realize they need to continue to invest the time that's necessary. Some mention pressure to keep up with new applications and responses to customers once they're committed to social media. Being able to easily observe the use of social media by others also seem to influence adoption, and observing what other businesses are doing gives confidence to try out new approaches in a non-threatening way, and to find out what the local market is doing. I'm going to turn over the discussion now to Linda to continue.
Okay, thank you, Barb. Okay, we then also use the technology acceptance model to explore factors that facilitated adoption of social media. And as Leslie had mentioned earlier, factors such as perceived usefulness relate to the TAM. Those areas, pardon me, that were particularly useful, as noted by our participants, were seeing a real impact on being able to meet their business goals, such as driving sales, brand management, etc. The immediacy of being able to implement strategies, the flexibility, being able to react quickly to shifting customer and market trends. The time factor in terms of being able to adjust their marketing materials and use less time and money and resources than with other types of media, and just really being able to improve their customer response time. They can connect with customers on their own time when it's convenient for them 24/7. And probably one of the biggest areas mentioned as a facilitator was reaching new customers, those that they could not reach through traditional media and those that were outside of their local market. Other facilitating factors included under the TAM are ease of use. Because many of our participants were familiar with Facebook, which was hands down the most used form of social media, they felt they needed minimal training. They could get on board quickly to use basic features. However, the italicized next two bullets are areas of concern, because as Facebook continues to evolve, as new forms of social media become more the norm in terms of what competitors are using, our participants felt less confident about developing a comprehensive social media strategy. So they were kind of picking and choosing selected applications. It wasn't really part of an overarching strategy, and they found it challenging to adjust to changes that Facebook features, different user features as they would come up because they were beyond the scope of the basic features. It was challenging for them to maneuver those. Perceived enjoyment. Certainly social media allows you to be creative as the user, interact more with customers. They felt that it actually allowed them to reflect their personality as a business owner and share excitement about products with customers. So although it's not face-to-face, they certainly have gotten involved in the interactivity and feel it is a relationship management tool. All right, now we're going to shift into the best practices component. What we found out in terms of gaining and diffusing social media knowledge. Our participants were able to develop knowledge about social media pardon me, by asking known users for help. They learned from family members, they learned from other employees, they adopted a learn-as-you-go approach, and also used online tools for help. They were very willing to seek information from sources outside of the community. Barb had mentioned the network effect, and looking at what other sources, other competitors, other businesses, other community organizations, industry level sources, suppliers, customers, what they are doing, and borrowing some of those good ideas for use in their own business. They also shared knowledge about their social media use by developing and maintaining their networks for both personal and professional use, and they participate in social media user groups. They cross-promote events and other offerings with other businesses and within the local community using social media. In terms of best practices for using and adopting social media, they hands down felt that social media was cost and time effective, relevant in relation to traditional media tools. As we have noted, the integration of social media with existing marketing efforts seemed to be the norm. They didn't abandon traditional marketing materials, but they enhanced it by partnering it with social media. They determined ways to use social media as both a marketing vehicle and also an information source. So some of our most savvy social media champions were really adept at seeking out information, not just using it as a tool or communication outlet. They leveraged the immediacy of social media to create interest, excitement, and to drive traffic. Management tools such as Hootsuite and Snap Retail that can streamline your social media efforts, posting one time but having it go to various social media outlets to improve connectedness is used by some of the social media champions, and all of them, when we mentioned this, at least in my interviews, were really interested to learn more. How can I be more effective, more time efficient? Using analytics to determine which social media tactics are effective. Some of our social media champions use these, such as Google Analytics, Facebook Insights, etc. Again, they're anxious to learn more in regard to those applications. And they also said, word of caution, do not outsource social media. It will not convey as authentic of an image to your customer, and thus it will be less effective. Okay, and our last best practices slide looks at engagement and balance. And social media was used to enhance the customer experience because of the frequency of interaction. The participants felt they were more connected with their customers on a personal level, and this was more impactful on their sales and marketing than traditional methods. They invited customers to engage with their businesses via social media, and also used the approach of recruiting friends and followers to help spread their social media presence. And lastly, they all looked for ways to find synergies in their social media use to effectively manage both personal and business life. So there was really a blending for these small business owners in terms of efficiency and communication and balancing all the balls that they have to juggle at one time, and that social media is enabling them to do that more effectively. Okay, our ongoing and future research. We will continue to develop and test an explanatory model of diffusion and adoption of social media technology among small rural business owners. We are working on multimedia case studies to profile and illustrate the best practices in social media, many of which I've mentioned today. And finally, looking at broader implications for explaining diffusion, adoption, and transfer of innovative business practices in rural settings. Okay, in just a moment we'll take any questions that you might have. I did want to share with you our contact information. You'll see it right on this slide. I would like to mention to you that there are, and I'll come back to this slide with our information in just a moment, there are a few references that we used as background for our study, so you can refer to those. I know this will be posted, so you'll have those for additional information. And there are 3 polls that we would like for you to take today to complete, if you would, please. We would appreciate your feedback after we finish with our question and answer. So those polls will be made available. I don't know if we have Rosa on the line. Okay, she's making those available now. So we would greatly appreciate your feedback on those questions.
And while Rosa's doing that, this is Scott Loveridge with the North Central Regional Center for Rural Development. Great talk so far. Looking forward to questions coming into the chat.
Thank you, Scott.
I did have one, and that is obviously as a user of social media, you're collecting data on your customers, but also your provider of social media is collecting data on you and how you interact with that customer. And did any of the businesses that you talked with express any concern about that dimension of the social media, that they're sort of revealing things about their strategy and how they interact with their customers, and then the company providing that service has tools that they're marketing to other businesses that may be competitors? So I wondered if anybody had brought that up.
This is Barb. I didn't find that in my 11 interviews. I think the things that I heard mostly about the interface between Facebook and the business owner were about some frustrating experiences with changing application features and so forth, and trying to figure all of that out. But no, I didn't hear any concerns about privacy.
Yeah, I would concur, Barb. In Iowa, I did not hear any concerns expressed about the privacy issue from the retailers. And I think also that there just was a level of frustration and not knowing, first of all, the time factor, and not feeling that it was terribly user-friendly to be able to navigate those new features when they would be added, and then also the higher level features such as the analytics and being able to know, with the ads, for example, you know, what should I spring for the extra money to use the ads, and what will I really get out of them, and how to make some of those marketing decisions. Sure, they're on there, they're available, but just really how do I go about knowing what my best choices might be?
Yes, and I think another thing, I can't really put words in our participants' mouths, but you know, I think because most of our businesses were from very small communities, they may be thinking that Facebook isn't really that interested in, you know, their little world. And the other thing is that I think we found, not only with this study but with other studies with small businesses, that within these communities, at least the folks we talk to are very willing to share their strategies, even with some businesses that might be considered competitors in their community. They're more likely to share and help, so they may not, you know, think of Facebook as being something that's going to threaten that.
And it might not individually, but collectively. Let's say, you know, a major retailer says, well, I've exhausted the urban market, I've exhausted the suburban market, what's left? Oh, there's the rural, and they might go to a provider and say, I'd like to see what people are buying in rural areas because I want to put in a bunch of chain stores.
Yeah, I don't think that was on their minds. Maybe it should be, but I didn't get the sense that it was.
Now, I had one person express something similar to that, but you know, they felt like they're using the social media to develop really strong relationships with their customers, you know, a one-on-one relationship, and that there was no way that big giant chain store could ever develop that quality of relationship. And so they became extremely devoted to, you know, strengthening that relationship as a way to kind of fight that chain store intrusion on their area.
Yeah, and I was really, you know, taken by the fact that even though they know that some elements of social media they could potentially outsource, but there was a real theme through the interviews that they wanted to remain authentic. And as Leslie said, this committedness to the relationship and to the quality and the customer experience that they bring forth in their businesses, they wanted that to be maintained in the social media as well. And that even though it wasn't face-to-face and it took a little while for them to make that transition, they really feel that it is a relationship management tool for them, and that they are able to provide more targeted information and really develop those relationships perhaps even better than they would be able to in the face-to-face sense, because of the immediacy and the targeted personal nature of the information that they can deliver to them via social media.
Connie had an interesting comment there in the chat box. I don't know if you've been watching the comments come in. They have a little program they're doing there, and where they're kind of getting together for 15 minutes to talk about how they can learn from each other, I guess, kind of like a little peer-to-peer network.
I found several instances of that going on in some of the communities, doing maybe not quite that formalized, but in one small community that I talked to someone who was quite she had quite a good handle on the use of social media, and she would have meetings with other businesses in town and direct them as to how to develop strategies. So we did find some of that too.
Okay.
Matt had a really interesting question there too. You know, oftentimes I know in the face-to-face relationships in rural areas, people are a little bit afraid to speak out because grudges get held. You know, my grandpa said this to your grandpa, and your grandpa said, I don't like you because of who your grandpa was.
Well,
so Matt's comment is that they might be a little less forthcoming on social media because of some of those issues.
now I had a couple of people mention something I think relates to this topic, and that is that, you know, they really thought carefully about the message that they wanted to send out with their social media postings, that they didn't want it to get personal. They wanted it to be about the business and about the unique personality of their business, and they really tried to totally stay away from any of the, you know, I think dirty laundry was used somewhere along in the conversations, but, you know, don't get into all the personal crazy things that go on in the communities, just keep it very business-like. And I think that was really a good tip that she had about, you know, doing business in a small community.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree that virtually all of the folks that I interviewed followed that as well.
So can they? But with Facebook, you can see who's sort of joined the group, right? So if I'm a friend with the county, the local hardware store. I can see who else locally is friend with that hardware store. So it could, oh, you're friends with him. Well, I don't want to go in your store anymore. You know, anything like that?
I didn't find anything like that. The only similar type of experience that one business owner told me about is lives in a very remote area, and they had an instant. They like to communicate what's going on in the community as well as what's going on in their business. And one day they had a bear in town. A bear wandered into town, and it was shot because it was a threat. And the business owner put that information on her. She recounted that story on her website and immediately got quite a bit of backlash from people that didn't think it was right to shoot the bear. So she realized from there that she needed to, you know, what the parameters are of what types of information to share on her Facebook page. So I think it is a learning process for them as well. But I didn't find any. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, Debbie had a comment about, you know, are there examples that you might be able to share someplace, maybe on your own website, or where kind of how they created these social media pages?
Well, we will, as we develop these case studies, our intention is to select 3 of perhaps what we feel are some of the best examples, and we'll be doing some video multimedia case studies, and that's one of the reasons why we asked about dissemination. We're going to disseminate on the National Extension website, but we'd be looking at other places we can do that as well.
And then Brian Whitaker was asking whether people kind of just skipped the stage of doing their website and just went straight to the social media and didn't bother having a website.
You know, there was quite a bit of discussion about that with the individuals I interviewed in Iowa. Most of them have not abandoned their website, but they say that they update it far less frequently than social media because they can easily change, adapt, edit their social media. Many of them are having when someone goes to their website, it's immediately forwarded over to their Facebook page, and they try to they seem to be investing less resources in the website. They see that it needs to be there. That's still a main way that globally people can find out about them, but they are using their Facebook pages much more so, and many of them have any website activity directly linked over to, it reverts over to their Facebook page. Barb and Leslie, I don't know if you found that as well.
Yeah, the same thing in Ohio. I think I had 4 businesses that really didn't have a web page, and others that, like Linda said, had just like a page with the company name and the address and the phone number, and then links to their Facebook page, because it's so hard to update those web pages, and if they paid someone to do it, they probably don't have the skills to do it, and so it's extremely frustrating. And so the Facebook and some of the social media tools are so easy to use, so that was why they were kind of abandoning their websites.
Yeah, I had one of the businesses that I talked to in Michigan was a newer business that had only been in business for about a year, and she was solely social media, didn't bother with a website at all. So
Gwen had a kind of an interesting comment. I'd maybe like to generalize from it a little bit. With any new communications technology, I noticed that there is sort of an age thing going on with, maybe younger people more willing to adopt than others, but not strictly age. There's something about personality, and I don't know if it's genetics or what, but some younger people will not adopt something at all, and an older person will go ahead and adopt it right away. So how do you work with the folks that are just not, they want to do it, but it's just not something that comes naturally?
Well, I think for me, the couple in Michigan, a couple of the champions that I talked to, one in particular, she was probably a woman in about her 50s, and she told me that she didn't even know how to use a laptop when she started setting up her Facebook page, and she just always used a desktop computer. So she's one of those that did go looking for some help. She got some regional business development program had beginning, the basics of social media, and but she had to actually cross that other hurdle of learning how to use a laptop before she could go forward with that. But then on the other hand, another case, a woman about the same age who had a career in a field that she would have had learned and had to use technology skills. She was probably one of the most adept Facebook users that I encountered. So it really was not an age thing.
Yeah, I found a couple of folks in Ohio that they weren't comfortable using Facebook, but they had a few young people, high school students or college students working for them, and they would work closely together and decide, okay, here's the kind of content that I want to put out there, and then they would have the students do that for them. And so they developed a really strong working relationship to, so that both people understood the image that they want to convey and the things, and so it seemed to work quite nicely for them.
Yeah, I found the same thing in Iowa, Leslie, in terms of having one or several key employees or key family members that would help them, but just they cautioned that needs to be consistent. I mean, you can't have, in some small businesses you might have many part-time employees, and there were a few I don't want to say horror stories, but some bad experiences they had, and it realized that, just because they know social media doesn't mean that they know my business and the image and the message that I'm trying to get out. So yes, in terms of that support and having the employee or the family member to be there to help lead them through social media, and in some cases do certain functions for them. In some cases it was just a function of, I don't have enough time to do it, so I need someone to assist me. But having it be a consistent person or several people that they trained and they really knew the brand image, the messaging, the quality of relationships that the owner was trying to convey through social media was critically important.
Julie had a question about some of the other platforms that are out there. Did you look at all those? Foursquare, LinkedIn?
Yes, we did. We asked on our web survey that we followed up after the interview, we asked what social media platforms were used. And that it's back on one of the slides that I maybe went through too quickly, but about half of them reported using Pinterest. LinkedIn was another that was mentioned. There were 11 out of the 32. Twitter 10, blogs 10, YouTube 10, and Foursquare 7. The thing was, though, and I mentioned this quickly as well, that after we had completed the interviews and the web survey, we went back, our graduate student went back and tried to find evidence of these businesses actually using some of the things that they said they used, and we didn't find very much evidence of that, and only in a portion of the, so I don't remember what the number was, but with Pinterest, going back and trying to find a business that was actually using it, that said they were using it, and we couldn't find any evidence. So I got the sense that Facebook was the primary, we know it was the primary focus, and that they were just beginning to start to experiment with some of the other social media platforms. They didn't feel that Twitter, that these are rural businesses again, and that Twitter really wasn't being used by their customers, so they didn't see the need to start using it.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting, though, and by far, Barb's right, by far the majority did not use Twitter, but we reported on one of our slides here that some of them were using Twitter to identify new suppliers, or suppliers would find them. I mean, so it's not just B2C, business to customer relationships. There were some, although not a lot, but I was impressed that there were some that were developing those supplier relationships and other industry level relationships using social media as well.
Yeah, there was also some reports of Twitter being a different customer base, that it seemed like the Twitter users on a customer to customer basis were much younger than Facebook users, and that was not really the customer base of the businesses. So that was, I think, one thing that relates to Twitter. But it really seemed, these were the champions that we talked to, so they are the early movers on all this, and it seems like for some of these, like the Foursquare and Pinterest, that these champions were way ahead of the curve for the local people in using them, and that they're just, they would try them and they wouldn't get any results from the use, and so they would just kind of let it sit to the side for a while until maybe greater uptake occurs in the community where they're located.
Yeah, I think there's an issue of critical mass of market penetration. If you're doing a social media thing and nobody else is on that particular platform, then it sort of defeats the purpose.
Exactly. Yeah. Now, can I go back to the very first question on the list? Adil wants to know about the list of participating businesses, and I just wanted to mention that our IRB approval doesn't allow us to reveal the identities of the businesses that participated. So we're not allowed to reveal that information.
Yep, that's the way things work. So, well, it's a great set of information, and we look forward to hearing about things as you move forward with it. It looks like there's one more comment that has popped in here from Matt. You want to address that one? I guess he's basically saying that they have to be leaders in a lot of areas, not just social media.
And we found that to be very true.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, and if I don't know if Matt is talking about when he's speaking of communities, if he's talking about these social media communities.
Yeah, that's what I wondered.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
And I think, yes, that I found, especially in the very small, much smaller communities, that to be a frustration of these small businesses in building up. They would be able to build up their friend base or their following base to 100 or 200, but then beyond, they get to a certain point and really struggle with trying to build the community up in large numbers, and how to do that was probably one of the biggest questions that they had.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it seemed that in the communities where the chamber or the visitors bureau, one of the community groups, also was very active with their social media use, that you saw, at least in Ohio, I saw a lot more lively of a social media community than in the communities where, our champion, our social media champion, was kind of the key user in the community. So to the extent that communities can get involved with this and help reinforce, I think that'd be a great thing for the future.
Yeah, well, a lot of the small businesses activities, I mean, obviously their business activities and sales, etc. That's one piece of information they want to get out. But in terms of their community support and really contributing to local events, local sports teams, etc. Most of the people that I talked to, they were also engaged in social media and promotional efforts. The co-promotion, again, it wasn't just co-promotion with other businesses on, oh, let's have stay open late Thursday and have extra shopping hours type of things. They really were in on the promotion of events and community activities and things that would improve the community overall, but at the same time getting their name and their face out there in terms of being a real leader in the community. So I would concur with what Barb and Leslie were saying, that and Matt's question, that their leadership through social media, it goes beyond just the scope of being a business, but being a community leader and key participant, a champion in their community in many ways.
Mm-hmm. I like Julie's comment about the thinking regionally. I think that's a great idea.
Well, again, I want to thank you. It's a very interesting presentation, very timely and certainly useful information for folks that are wanting to help businesses in their areas or are a business think about, how do we go about using these new tools. So great, and look forward to the future updates on your progress.
Thanks, Scott.
Okay, thank you, Scott, and thank you everyone for logging in today.